inheriting my grandmother's house was unexpected. I'd barely known of his existence, yet here I was, left with everything he owned, including a warning that came scribbled in a hasty letter: stay out of the basement. The house itself was an eerie, decaying Victorian on a long-forgotten street, filled with dust and shadows, the air thick with the musty scent of mildew. Despite the strange creaks in the night and the constant chill that clung to me, I decided to stay. That first night, sleep was impossible. Every creak sounded sharper, every shadow seemed to stretch. When I heard a faint scratching sound, my mind drifted back to my uncle's warning. The noise was coming from beneath my feet. Trying to ignore it, I told myself it was probably just a rat or maybe a loose pipe. The scratching continued each night, slow and rhythmic, a sound that grated on my nerves. By the third night, I had convinced myself to go down. The basement door, warped and rotting, barely opened. Inside, an odor hit me, musty and sour, with an underlying sweetness that made my stomach turn. Descending the stairs, I flicked on the single, dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. Shadows clung to every wall, every surface. I took slow, cautious steps, the wood groaning under my weight. My eyes adjusted, and I could finally see what was down there: boxes piled high, furniture draped in sheets, an old boiler. Nothing too odd, at least at first glance. Then, as I turned, I noticed something carved into the wall: symbols, old and strange, scratched deep into the wood and stone. And the smell sickly sweet, almost like rotting fruit, was stronger near one wall. That wall didn't look right. Its bricks were a slightly different color, newer, and the mortar was uneven. I felt drawn to it, an urge growing inside me to see what was hidden behind. Before I knew it, I was chipping away at the wall with an old iron hook I'd found on the ground. One brick came loose, then another, each one revealing a space beyond. And on the other side was a room. I couldn't see much, just darkness and shapes. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I noticed something: horrifying shadows that weren't mine. They shifted, barely perceptible, like someone or something was moving. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, but the feeling gnawed at me, refusing to let go. A faint whisper filled the air, growing louder with each second. I don't remember moving closer, but somehow my face was nearly pressed to the wall, my ears straining to make out the words. The whispers were chaotic, overlapping like multiple people speaking all at once. My skin prickled, and my chest felt tight, but I couldn't look away. Then I saw it. A face pale, eyes wide and hollow, mouth twisted in a silent scream. And there were more behind it. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. They stared as though they could see me, sense me. I stumbled back, tripping over a pile of debris, and hit the ground hard. The whispering grew louder, a rising tide of murmurs that twisted into anguished screams. I scrambled to my feet, but I couldn't tear my gaze from the wall. The faces were pressing closer, one by one, crowding the tiny window I'd made. Their mouths stretched open, screaming silently, fingers clawing at the air, as though trying to reach through to me. The light flickered, then died, plunging me into darkness. I felt the walls closing in, and suddenly the smell was everywhere, thick and suffocating. I fumbled my way back to the stairs, heart pounding. Just as I reached the top, I felt something brush against my ankle, a cold, skeletal touch that made my blood freeze. I slammed the door shut and locked it, gasping for air as my heart pounded in my chest. The house fell into a dead silence, the scratching and whispers vanishing, but I knew they were still down there, lurking in the darkness, waiting. That night, as I lay in bed, I could feel them beneath me, crawling, whispering, scratching against the walls. The sound was unbearable, like countless tiny claws clawing relentlessly from below. I knew they were there, hiding in the basement, their empty eyes staring upward, watching and waiting. The whole house seemed to pulse with an eerie hum, alive and aware of my presence, pressing in closer as though ready to pull me down. My great-uncle's warning echoed in my mind, more chilling now than ever. Stay out of the basement. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the whispers grew louder, their tone desperate, almost frenzied. The fear tightened in my chest. That basement wasn't just a room beneath the house, it was a trap, a gateway to something much darker. And I knew with a horrible certainty that it wasn't done with me yet.